Why samurai cleaned their mind every day? Not because they were spiritual men seeking peace, because they were killers who understood something about the human mind that most people will never learn. A samurai who went into battle carrying yesterday's fear was already dead. A samurai who woke up still carrying the weight of last week's failure moved slower, thought slower, reacted slower, and in a world where the difference between living and dying was measured in fractions of a second, a clouded mind was not a personal problem. It was a death sentence. So they built a system, not a morning routine, not a wellness practice, a daily protocol for stripping the mind completely clean, removing everything that did not belong there, every grudge, every distraction, every fragment of yesterday that had no business living in today. And what they discovered in that process was something that modern neuroscience is only now beginning to confirm. A clean mind is not a calm mind. It is a lethal mind, precise, present, capable of things that a cluttered mind cannot even perceive as possible. This video is going to give you 7 samurai practices for cleaning your mind daily, not as a spiritual exercise, as a survival tool. Welcome to Void Dojo. Before we get into the 7 practices, I want you to understand something about the samurai relationship with the mind that completely separates their approach from anything you have heard before. The samurai did not believe the mind was something you managed. They believed it was something you maintained. The way you maintain a blade. A sword that is not cleaned and sharpened every single day develops rust, microscopic at first, invisible to the eye. But rust that is allowed to sit accumulates, and a blade covered in rust does not cut cleanly. It tears, it sticks, it fails at the exact moment you need it most. The samurai looked at the human mind and saw the same process happening. Every day that passes without deliberate mental maintenance, something accumulates. Residue from unresolved interactions, the weight of decisions not yet made, the slow corrosion of fear that was never examined and released, frustration that was swallowed instead of processed, doubt that was ignored instead of confronted. None of these things feel significant on their own. Just like a single day without cleaning a blade feels harmless. But the samurai understood that it is never a single day. It is the accumulation. And accumulation over time is what turns a sharp mind into a dull one. What turns a man capable of clarity into a man drowning in noise he cannot even identify anymore. This is what is happening to most people right now. Not a dramatic breakdown, not a crisis, just the quiet daily accumulation of mental rust that nobody taught them how to remove. The 7 practices in this video are the removal process. Each one targets a specific type of accumulation. Each one takes less than 10 minutes, and each one has been field tested not in a wellness retreat or a therapy office, but on actual battlefields, by men whose lives depended on mental clarity. Let us begin. Practice 1. Mokuso, the emptying. Every samurai training session began and ended the same way. The warriors would kneel in seiza, close their eyes, and sit in complete stillness for 2 to 3 minutes. This practice was called mokuso, and its purpose was not relaxation. It was not meditation in the way we typically think of it. Mokuso was a deliberate act of mental emptying, like pouring out a cup before refilling it. The logic was simple and brutal. A mind full of the previous activity cannot fully engage with the next one. A samurai who carried the tension of the last battle into the next training session was not training cleanly. He was training through a filter of accumulated experience that distorted his perception and slowed his response. Mokuso removed the filter. 2 minutes. Eyes closed. No agenda. No attempt to think positive thoughts or visualize outcomes, or breathe in any particular pattern. Simply sitting with the intention of letting the current contents of the mind settle to the bottom, like sediment in disturbed water, not pushing the thoughts away, not engaging with them, simply allowing them to lose momentum and sink. Modern neuroscience has a name for what happens during this process: default mode network deactivation. When you stop directing your attention at specific tasks and allow the mind to simply be, the brain shifts into a state that clears short-term cognitive load and improves executive function. In plain language, 2 minutes of doing nothing on purpose makes every subsequent mental activity measurably more effective. The samurai did not have this research. They had something better. Centuries of direct observation that a warrior who practiced mokuso before a bout was sharper than one who did not. Every time, without exception. The application is so simple it feels wrong. Before any significant activity today, stop for 2 minutes. Sit down, close your eyes. Do not try to think or not think. Simply wait for the water to still. You will feel the difference immediately. This is practice 1, the emptying. And it costs you nothing but 2 minutes you were probably going to waste anyway. Practice 2, misogi, the water ritual. In 1942, a Japanese naval officer named Hiro Onoda was deployed to the Philippine island of Lubang with orders to conduct guerrilla warfare and never surrender. What followed became one of the most extraordinary stories of mental endurance in recorded history. Onoda fought alone in the jungle for 29 years after the war ended because nobody successfully communicated to him that it was over. He emerged in 1974 still mentally sharp, still disciplined, still capable. When journalists asked how he maintained his mental clarity through nearly 3 decades of jungle isolation, Onoda described a daily ritual he never broke. Every single morning before anything else, he found water, a stream, collected rainwater, whatever was available, and he washed his face and hands with complete deliberate attention. Not quickly, not mechanically, with full presence. Feeling the water, acknowledging what it was doing, treating the act as a formal transition from the night into the day. This is misogi, the water ritual, and it is one of the oldest mental maintenance practices in Japanese culture. The original form of misogi was extreme. Samurai and monks would stand beneath ice-cold mountain waterfalls for extended periods, the physical shock of the cold water functioning as a hard reset for the nervous system. The cold forced total presence. You cannot be distracted when freezing water is hitting your body. The mind has no choice but to arrive completely in the present moment. But the everyday version of misogi is available to anyone, anywhere, with no waterfall required. The practice is this. When you wake up, go to water before you go to your phone, before you speak to anyone, before you consume any information. Wash your hands and face with complete deliberate attention. Feel the temperature of the water, feel it touching your skin, and hold a single clear intention while you do it. Today I begin clean. Whatever happened yesterday is yesterday. I am washing it away. This sounds almost insultingly simple, but the neuroscience of embodied ritual confirms what the samurai observed empirically. Physical sensory anchors combined with clear intention create measurable state changes in the brain. The water is not magic. The intention is not magic. But the combination of physical sensation and deliberate mental declaration interrupts the automatic continuation of whatever mental state you woke up in, and creates a genuine breakpoint between who you were yesterday and who you are choosing to be today. Onoda used this practice to maintain mental coherence through 29 years of conditions that broke every psychological model for what a human mind can sustain. He had nothing else, just water and intention, every morning without exception. If it worked in a Philippine jungle for 29 years, it will work in your bathroom for 5 minutes before work. Practice 3. Fukanuke, the release breath. There is a moment that every samurai knew intimately. The moment after something difficult ends, a training bout, a confrontation, a decision made under pressure, a loss absorbed. The moment when the body is still activated, still flooded with the chemistry of intensity, and the mind is still partially living inside what just happened, rather than where it actually is. The samurai called the failure to exit this state carrying the fight forward, and they understood it as one of the most dangerous mental states a warrior could inhabit, not because the emotion itself was wrong, but because emotion from a past event experienced in a present moment distorts perception of the present reality. You are reading the current situation through the chemical lens of the previous one, and that distortion costs you accuracy, speed, clarity. They solved this with a single practice, Fukanuke, the release breath. The technique is almost absurdly simple. One long, slow exhale through the mouth, deliberately longer than feels natural. While the breath leaves the body, the samurai would consciously release the tension of the previous moment alongside it, not metaphorically, physically, letting the shoulders drop, letting the jaw unclench, letting the hands open from whatever grip they had formed. The exhale is a literal vehicle for carrying the residue of the previous moment out of the body. Here is why this works at a physiological level. The exhale activates the parasympathetic nervous system. It is the only part of your breathing cycle that directly triggers the body's recovery response. When you extend the exhale deliberately, you are manually switching your nervous system from sympathetic activation, the state of alertness and response, to parasympathetic recovery, the state of processing and restoration. You are not suppressing what just happened, you are completing it, giving it a clean ending so it does not bleed into what comes next. The samurai used Fukanuke after every training bout, every difficult conversation, every moment of high intensity, not because they were managing emotions in the therapeutic sense, but because they understood that each new moment deserves to be encountered without the distortion of the previous one. That clarity is not the absence of intensity, it is the ability to be fully intense and then fully clear, fully present in each moment as it arrives, without dragging the last one into it. The practice takes 4 seconds, 1 breath, done. After anything difficult today, before you move to the next thing, stop. 1 long, slow exhale, shoulders drop, hands open, jaw releases. The previous moment is complete. This one begins clean. 3 practices in and you already have a complete morning protocol that takes less than 15 minutes total. Mokuso before you engage, misogi at the water, Fukanuke after every significant transition. These 3 alone will change the texture of your days within 1 week of consistent practice. Not because they are dramatic, because they are precise, and precision applied consistently is how the samurai built the mental infrastructure that made everything else possible. But we are only getting started, because the next 4 practices go deeper, into territory that most people never reach. into the part of the samurai mental system that was not just about clearing the mind, but about rebuilding it, stronger, sharper, more capable of sustained clarity than it has ever been. Stay with me. Practice 4. Hansei, the daily reckoning. In 1600, Tokugawa Ieyasu sat alone in his war room the night before the Battle of Sekigahara, the largest battle in Japanese history. 160,000 men would fight the following day, and the outcome would determine who controlled Japan for the next 2.5 centuries. His generals expected to find him studying battle maps, planning troop movements, preparing final orders. Instead, they found him sitting in stillness with a single candle burning in front of him, writing. Not strategy, not orders, not letters to his family in case he died the following day. He was writing an accounting of his failures. Every decision in the previous months that he had made incorrectly. Every moment where his judgment had been compromised by emotion or incomplete information. Every place where his leadership had been less than it should have been. This was Hansei, the daily reckoning. And Tokugawa practiced it every single evening of his life, not as self-punishment, not as a spiritual exercise in humility, as intelligence gathering. The samurai understood that the most dangerous blind spots are not the ones you can see. They are the ones created by your own patterns of thinking, your own recurring errors, your own automatic responses that you have stopped questioning because they feel like personality rather than habit. Hansei was the practice of making those patterns visible, of catching your own errors before they compounded, of treating your own mind with the same analytical rigor you would apply to any other system you are responsible for maintaining. The practice has a specific structure, not general reflection. Not asking yourself how your day went, which produces vague emotional responses that change nothing. Hansei asks 3 precise questions. Where today did I act from fear rather than clarity? Where today did I avoid something I should have faced? Where today did my behavior not match my values? These questions are designed to surface the specific categories of mental accumulation that the samurai considered most corrosive, fear-based decisions that were rationalized as practical, avoidance that was disguised as strategy, the slow drift between who you say you are and how you actually behave. You do not need to write pages. Tokugawa wrote 1 line per question. The point is not length, the point is honesty. The kind of honesty that is only possible when you sit alone with a question and refuse to move on until you have given it a real answer. Modern research on deliberate self-reflection confirms what Tokugawa knew intuitively. People who engage in structured self-reflection after significant events show measurably faster skill development, better decision-making under pressure, and greater emotional regulation over time than people who simply accumulate experience without examining it. Experience without reflection does not produce wisdom. It produces repetition, the same mistakes made with increasing fluency. Hansei is what converts experience into intelligence. It is what turned Tokugawa from a capable general into the man who built the most stable government in Japanese history. And it takes less than 5 minutes per day. Tonight, before you sleep, 3 questions, 1 honest answer each. No performance, no self-compassion theater. Just the cold, clear accounting of a mind that takes itself seriously enough to examine itself. Practice 5. Zanshin, the awareness that remains. There is a concept in Japanese martial arts that has no direct equivalent in any Western language. Zanshin. It translates roughly as the mind that remains, or lingering awareness. and it refers to a specific quality of attention that a master maintains after an action is completed. In sword practice, zanshin is the alert, focused awareness that a swordsman maintains after delivering a strike. Not relaxing because the movement is finished, not moving to the next thing, remaining fully present in the moment after, aware of the space, aware of what just happened, aware of what might come next. The action is complete, but the awareness continues. Most people live in the opposite of zanshin. They are mentally already at the next thing before the current thing is finished, already planning the response before the person they are talking to has finished speaking, already thinking about what to make for dinner while they are still in a meeting, already in tomorrow while today is still happening. This is not efficiency. It is the opposite of efficiency, because the mind that is partially somewhere else is not fully anywhere. It processes everything at reduced capacity, misses details that matter, and generates the constant low-grade anxiety of never being fully present in any single moment. The samurai train zanshin because in combat the moment after the strike is when you are most vulnerable, the moment when the novice relaxes and the master does not. But they discovered that this quality of sustained presence, trained in the dojo, transferred to every other area of life. A samurai with developed zanshin did not just maintain awareness after a sword strike. He maintained awareness after every significant moment in his day. After a conversation ended, after a meal was finished, after a decision was made, he remained present with what had just happened long enough to actually absorb it before moving to the next thing. The zanshin practice is simple but uncomfortable for modern people, because it requires something that feels like waste. After anything significant in your day, a conversation, a meeting, a creative session, a difficult interaction, pause for 60 seconds before moving to the next thing. Do not check your phone. Do not start planning the next activity. Simply remain present in the moment after. Notice what you are feeling. Notice what just happened. Notice what the experience left behind. 60 seconds. That is the entire practice. But those 60 seconds, applied consistently, do something remarkable over time. They train the nervous system to process experiences as they happen, rather than accumulating them as unprocessed residue. The mental clutter that most people carry is largely composed of experiences that were never fully absorbed, moments that pass too quickly for the mind to complete its processing. Zanshin closes those loops in real time, so they do not accumulate into the weight that makes the mind feel heavy and slow. Musashi Miyamoto, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history, wrote about zanshin in the Book of Five Rings as the quality that separated masters from skilled practitioners. The skilled practitioner executes the technique. The master remains present after the technique. That remaining presence is where mastery actually lives. Practice 6. Kotodama, the discipline of words. In Japanese tradition, there is a belief that words carry spiritual weight, that what you say does not merely describe reality, but participates in creating it. This principle is called Kotodama, the soul of language. And while the metaphysical framing may or may not resonate with you, the psychological mechanism beneath it is completely confirmed by modern science. The words you use to describe your experience are not neutral labels. They actively shape your neurological processing of that experience. When you describe a difficult situation as overwhelming, your brain processes it differently than if you describe the same situation as challenging. Not because the words change the situation, because the words change the lens through which your brain interprets the situation. And interpretation determines emotional response. and emotional response determines available cognitive resources. And available cognitive resources determine what you are actually capable of doing about the situation. The samurai understood this intuitively and built it into their mental maintenance practice in a very specific way. They were trained to describe difficulty with precision and without amplification. Not to minimize what was hard, but to refuse to make it larger than it actually was through imprecise or emotionally loaded language. A wound is a wound, not a catastrophe. A defeat is a defeat, not a humiliation. A difficult opponent is a difficult opponent, not an insurmountable obstacle. This precision was not emotional suppression. The samurai felt fear and pain and grief as fully as any human being. But they maintained a strict discipline around the language they used to describe these experiences, both in speech and in internal monologue, because they understood that the story you tell about what happens to you is more powerful than what actually happens to you. And the story is built from words, and you choose the words. The Kotodama practice has two components. The first is external. For 1 week, notice every time you use language that amplifies difficulty. Every time you say something is killing me, or I am destroyed, or this is impossible. Replace it with precise language. This is difficult. This requires more effort than I expected. I have not found the solution yet. The second is internal. Begin to notice the words you use in your private internal monologue about yourself and your life. The words you would never say out loud, but that run constantly beneath your conscious awareness. This is where Kotodama is most powerful and most neglected. Because the internal voice speaks constantly, and most people never examine what it is actually saying, or what those words are doing to their perception of what is possible for them. The samurai who maintained discipline over their language, internal and external, were not suppressing emotion. They were refusing to give their difficulties more power than the difficulties actually had. They were keeping the mind's interpretation of reality as accurate as possible, undistorted by amplified language in either direction. Clean language, precise language, language that matches reality without exaggerating it or minimizing it. This is Kotodama as a daily practice, and it costs nothing except attention. Practice 7, Munen Muso, the night clearing. The final practice in the samurai mental maintenance system happened at the very end of each day. And it is perhaps the most important of all 7, because it determines the quality of the raw material the mind has to work with the following morning. Munen Muso translates as no mind, no thought, and in its formal practice it refers to a state of complete mental stillness that advanced practitioners could enter at will. But in its practical daily application, Munen Muso was the samurai's evening protocol for releasing everything the day had deposited in the mind before sleep. Here is what the samurai understood about sleep that most people in the modern world have completely lost. Sleep is not a passive state. It is the most active mental maintenance period in the human experience. During sleep, particularly during deep sleep and REM cycles, the brain performs essential processing functions. It consolidates memory, clears metabolic waste products that accumulate during waking activity, integrates emotional experiences, and repairs neural pathways damaged by stress and overuse. But here is the critical point. The brain can only perform these functions effectively on what is actually present in the mind at the moment of sleep onset. If you fall asleep with 17 unresolved thoughts, 3 unfinished emotional processes, and the accumulated tension of a full day still active in your nervous system, Your brain spends its sleep processing capacity trying to manage that input rather than performing the deeper restoration it is designed to do. You wake up tired, not because you did not sleep enough hours, but because the quality of what happened during those hours was compromised by what you brought into them. The samurai solved this with Munen Muso, a specific pre-sleep protocol designed to complete the day cleanly before surrendering to sleep. The protocol has 3 steps. Step 1. Physical release. 5 minutes of slow, deliberate movement, not exercise, the opposite of exercise. Slow neck rolls, shoulder releases, deliberate unclenching of every part of the body that accumulated tension during the day. Starting at the top of the head and moving deliberately downward to the feet. The physical release is not just for the body. The body and the mind are not separate systems. Physical tension is stored mental residue. Releasing the body releases the mind simultaneously. Step 2. The completion statement. The samurai would make a single deliberate declaration that the day was finished, not reviewing the day, not planning tomorrow, not processing what happened. A single clean statement of completion. Today is done. What was done is done. What was not done will meet me tomorrow. I release this day completely. This sounds almost childishly simple. But the act of making a deliberate verbal or internal declaration of completion does something specific in the brain. It signals to the default mode network that the active processing of today's events can cease. It creates the cognitive equivalent of closing a file. The file still exists. You can open it tomorrow, but for now it is closed, and the system can redirect its resources. Step 3. Intentional entry. Rather than falling asleep while scrolling a screen or with the residue of whatever you last consumed still active in your mind, the samurai entered sleep deliberately, with a single clear thought or image held in the mind at the moment of sleep onset. For many samurai, this was simply the image of their purpose, the thing they were living for, held lightly and warmly in the mind as the last conscious act before sleep took them. This is not visualization in the contemporary self-help sense. It is simply the act of choosing what you take with you into the unconscious processing of sleep. What the mind holds at sleep onset influences what it processes during sleep. The samurai understood this empirically. Neuroscience confirms it precisely. What you bring into sleep is what your brain works on while you sleep. Bring in completion and purpose and your brain restores you. Bring in noise and unresolved tension and your brain struggles to manage it and delivers you back to waking life partially processed and partially drained. The full Munen Muso protocol takes less than 10 minutes. But over time it compounds into a qualitatively different relationship with sleep. A relationship in which sleep becomes not just rest, but genuine restoration. The nightly maintenance cycle that the samurai understood was not a luxury, but a weapon. A way of showing up each morning sharper than you were the day before, rather than slightly more depleted. 7 practices, 1 complete daily system. Mokuso in the morning. 2 minutes of deliberate emptying before you engage with the day. Misogi at the water. A clean intentional transition from night to day before any information enters. Fukinuke after every significant transition. 1 exhale that completes what just happened before the next thing begins. Hansei in the evening. 3 honest questions. The daily intelligence gathering that converts experience into wisdom. Zanshin after every significant moment. 60 seconds of remaining present before moving on. Kotodama throughout the day. Precise language that refuses to give difficulty more power than it actually has. Munen Muso, before sleep. The three-step protocol that completes the day cleanly and enters sleep with intention. The samurai did not develop these practices because they were spiritual or philosophical. They developed them because they were practical. Because they understood that the mind is the primary weapon, and primary weapons require daily maintenance. That a mind allowed to accumulate rust becomes unreliable at exactly the moments reliability matters most. Most people clean their body every day without question. They would not consider going a week without washing because the accumulation would become intolerable. But they allow their mind to go days, weeks, years without deliberate maintenance. And then they wonder why it feels heavy, why it feels slow, why clarity feels like something that happens to other people. The samurai knew something simple and devastating. You do not rise to the level of your ambitions. You fall to the level of your mental maintenance. 7 practices. Less than 30 minutes total per day. Begin with 1. The one that speaks most directly to the specific weight you are carrying right now. Practice it for 7 days until it becomes automatic. Then add another. The mind you are trying to build is not built in a single dramatic moment of transformation. It is built the way the samurai built everything. Slowly, precisely. 1 day of maintenance at a time. The path is long. Walk it anyway. This is Void Dojo.